I'm going to say a phrase, a line, I'm going to tell you something, and your response is going to be, poor Dave, okay? Because it's hard. So when I was 13 years old in 1993 in manual arts, this guy called Aaron came up to me and said, Dave, I am going to bash you. Poor Dave. Right? So he came up to me. I can still remember now. That's been like, I don't know, that's a long time ago. I can still remember where I was standing, which table I was near, and he came up and he said, Dave, I'm going to bash you. I didn't even know I did anything wrong. Yeah, poor Dave again. Right? And so for the next, I don't know, 6 months, I did everything in my power to avoid this kid. Like I wasn't a particularly aggressive kid. I wasn't a fighter. I've never been in a fight in my life. And so this guy, Aaron, I knew that he'd be in manual arts, and so I'd try to be sick on the day that manual arts was on. And sometimes I actually was sick, because if you've ever been really worried, you can worry yourself to the stomach sick, right? You can be like, oh, I'm worried sick here. And I avoided him at all costs, and I tried to, get mum to let me stop going to that class, and I tried to change classes, and I just tried to do anything I could to avoid having this bashing that was coming my way. I don't know if anyone ever told you at school that you were going to get bashed, but it's not much fun, right? And so I spent a long time, I reckon at least 6 months, just in this heightened state of anxiety where I was trying to get away from this guy called Aaron because I knew that he was going to take me out. Man, looking back, it would have been way less painful just to cop a punch in the face than to go through all the anxiety and worry that it caused trying to avoid this kid, Aaron. I'll tell you his last name, but then you'll all get on his Facebook and hate him for me, so I appreciate that. Do you know what the kicker is? The bashing never came. I don't know why. I think he lost interest or something, but eventually it just never came. And that's the problem with worry, isn't it? You pay the price for something that may not eventuate. Or if it does eventuate, it might not be nearly as bad as you worry about it being. That's the problem with worry. Worry is something that plagues countless people on a daily basis. I think we live in a society that's got a heightened sense of worry. We're worried about the future. We're worried about finances. We're worried about our health. We're worried about our relationships. We can be worried about so many things. And I'm going to say from the very start, and categorically say from the very start, that it's actually not God's plan for us to live in a state of worry. He doesn't want us to be worried about this and that. He actually speaks a lot about worry. There's a lot in the Bible about God's plan for us when it comes to worry. And we're going to look at a very familiar passage today in the book of Luke. But just because it's familiar, I don't want you to be like going, oh yeah, I've heard this before. Because if we all had heard this passage and applied it, there wouldn't be a worried person in this room. God has a lot to say about worry, and it's not his plan for you to stay in a state of worry. So if you've got your Bible, open up to Luke chapter 12, verse 22. But if you didn't bring one or you don't have a Bible, it's okay, because it'll be up on the screen anyway. No worries. Did someone just say no worries? Nice. Okay. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, about your body, or what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than the birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very thing, why do you worry about the rest?" How good's that? He says, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, your body, or what you will wear. Don't worry about your life. Like, think about that for a sec. Is there anything that you worry about that's not part of your life? Like, it's kind of like the whole thing, isn't it? Like, that's your finances and your health and your provision, your appearance, your identity. It says everything. Don't worry about anything. He's pointing to everything, and he says, You know, there's a life available where you worry about nothing. That's huge. Now, do you think he's being sarcastic or teasing us? Or do you think that it's actually possible, that he's being dead serious, that it's okay and that it's possible for us to live in a way where we don't worry about anything? I don't know if I'm the only one in this room, but I'd love to live a life where I don't worry about anything. You know, yep, I see a few hands. There's a lot of nodding and even unsolicited nodding going on. I see those hands. I'd love to live in a way where I don't worry about anything. And so your question should be, how do we get it? Well, it's in this passage, and the key is understanding how much you mean to God. Verse 24, I'll read it again, says, consider the ravens. Ravens are like crows. So consider the birds, consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than the birds? So if God's going to use his infinite resources to take care of a raven, right, to take care of a simple bird, how much more is he going to take care of you, his beloved child? If he's going to care about something as disposable as a bird, maybe you don't think birds are disposable, but something as lowly as a bird, how much more is he going to take care of you, made in his image, son or daughter, the one that he died for, the one that he cares about right down to his heart? He cares so deeply about you that he's going to take care of you. And the comparison here is that, like, the Bible talks about ontology, which is like the order of priority to God. And it starts with himself, obviously. And then there's human beings, which is his next greatest creation. Then there's angelic beings. And then underneath that are animals. Like, you've got to understand your levels above the care that God has for animals. Yet he's going to take care of animals even though they don't sow or reap or store away in barns. Imagine how much more he's going to take care of you, made in his image. Amen. See, your understanding of how much God loves you will affect how much you worry or not. If you understand right down in the depth of your core that you're loved by God, then you're not going to worry, because you know that he's going to take care of you as a good parent takes care of their child. You think about a newborn baby. Okay, does a newborn baby worry about where it's going to get its next meal? Or all it does... Who said yes? Someone with a... Was that you, Jason? Ah! They don't worry. All they do is cry, and then all of a sudden a magical booby appears. They have a feed, and everything's taken care of. Now, did the baby do anything to earn the feed? No. Does the baby do anything to work or labour or spin for the feed? No, the baby's so dependent on the parent that all it does is cry, and then the parent is there to bring the provision. Do you know we're called to be as reliant on God as that? That we are built to be provided for. Worrying is as futile, this passage says, as trying to add an hour to your life. It's just not, it's a waste of time. And I know that's hard to hear because we can get caught up in worry, but as I said, your level of worry is going to be dependent on how much you believe God loves you or not. If you really believe God loves you, which he does, you're not going to worry about a single thing. He's going to meet your every need. He gave you one example with the ravens, and he gives you another example now just to make sure you get it, from verse 27. Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Don't worry about that. For the pagan world runs after all such things. And your Father knows that you need them. But seek the kingdom, and these things will be given you as well. So he says you're more important than birds, but he goes even further to say, okay, consider how flowers grow, these wild flowers. They don't labour or spin, they don't work, they don't, flowers exist for very little purpose other than looking beautiful and feeding bees, right? They don't really have a great purpose that warrants them being provided for. They just exist for beauty's sake. And this passage says that not even Solomon is dressed with the splendour of these flowers. Now, Solomon was the wisest, richest king that ever lived. And even him, with all his tailors and all the people making clothes for him, couldn't dress him as beautifully as these flowers. That is another analogy saying, okay, if God's going to take care of these little flowers, these wild flowers, who do nothing to earn his provision, how much more is he going to take care of you once again? And then he uses this phrase in verse 28, O ye of little faith. It's actually a faith issue to believe that God's going to provide for you. And you can bolster your faith. I don't think this is a rebuke. I think this is it's an invitation to have bigger faith. It's an invitation to grow in your faith. See, there's two types of faith in the New Testament. There's faith for salvation and faith like this that can be exercised. And the faith for salvation is a gift. You're given faith to believe in God, okay? So that's not what this faith is talking about. What this faith is talking about is faith that can be little or faith that can be large. It's faith that can be grown. Picture it like this, okay? Imagine this. It's the end of the month and all the bills are coming at once. You know those months. The mortgage is due, the car payment's due, everything's due at once, and you're actually tempted to worry about the situation. And do you know what? You do worry about the situation, and it keeps you up at night. And you're a little bit worried sick about it. You don't know how the money's going to be there. You don't know how you're going to pay for everything. You're actually worried. But God actually gets you through. And you get the bills paid. And you get to the end of the month, and it's all okay. And it's a little notch in your faith belt reminding you that God will take care of you. Next time the end of the month comes around, you worry a little less. You still worry. You still got a bit of anxiety in your stomach. You still feel a bit sick. But once again, God comes through and you get your bills paid and you get through your month and your faith's built up a little bit more. The next time you worry a bit less. The following time, the worrying is diminished a little bit more. And eventually you get to a place where you actually do not worry. And your circumstances haven't changed. You've changed. That's what this passage is saying when it says you of little faith. It's saying you've got a faith that's there that can be built up. It's a process of learning to trust God. It's that He's been there for you before and He's going to be there for you next time. How many times have you found that to be true? You worry about something and then you get to the end of it and go, actually, God did come through for me. That's how your faith is built. God did come through to me and I did see breakthrough and I did pay the bills and that person didn't go off on me and Aaron never bashed me, right? It was all right, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. It could still be coming. Thank you, Tony. Poor Dave. Let's continue. Verse 32. Don't be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It sort of looks like he's taken a bit of a sidestep, but he's not, because what he starts revealing here is that there's two ways to live. There's two values in life. There's two priorities in life, and one is about an earthly kingdom and one is about a heavenly kingdom. And he says of the earthly kingdom that it's something that can wear out, that it's something that it can be stolen, that it can rust and it can be destroyed. That'd be the things that only last for this side of eternity. You know, if we're worried or focused, or our heart is drawn towards things like status or money or possessions or our title at work, if that's where our heart's drawn to, is it any wonder that we can feel worried when those things are under attack? You know, when we're considering and focused on the temporal, on the temporary, on the things this side of eternity. It's funny, down the back there's just baby passing going everywhere. It's all good. You don't have to go. Oh, you're just standing having a joke. That's cool. Okay, so what this is saying is, he's saying, he gives us one example. He says, sell your possessions and give to the poor, as an example of what it looks like to live in the kingdom. Right? What he's saying is that there's a way to live that is temporary, and there's a way to live that is eternal. And if we live in a way that is temporary, our lives are going to be bound up with worry. Because if we live in a way that is eternal, if we sow into eternal things, then nothing can steal those things. They can't be stolen. They can't rust out. No thief can steal them. They're of eternal significance, so they're going to last forever. So we don't worry about them because they can't be taken away. I guess the question this passage asks, and it says in verse 34, it says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The question is, how's your heart? What does your heart long for? What does your heart meditate on? Is it things of the world or things of the kingdom? Because when you start to dissect your heart, you're going to know whether or not you're living in a way that's going to cause anxiety, or one living in a way that's going to cause freedom. When you live for eternal things, you are not going to worry, because nothing of eternal things can be stolen from you. You know, if I have my heart, my treasure in, say, a car, do you know how much of a shifting sand that is? How unstable a foundation that is? A car, I could have it parked out there right now and someone could ram straight into it. Like, having our treasure in something material is just going to have no eternal consequence because it can be taken away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We don't want to have our hearts drawn towards things of this world because it's just vapor. I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask again. Are you surprised at how old you are already? Yeah. Right? I bet you're surprised at how old you are already. No? No, well, for a lot of people, we're surprised at how old we are already. And it's a reminder that this world is vapor. That I still think that the Millennium New Year's was just not long ago. That was 22 years ago. Remember that? No, you don't. You weren't even born. You weren't even born yet. Some of you weren't even, you were 4. Yeah. You remember that, Heather? The Millennium? You do, don't you? Hey? Right, it feels like it was just a vapor. It was 22 years ago. How long did you go to get married ago? 63 years ago you got married. That deserves a round of applause. 63 years ago. You're 61 years ago you got married. That deserves a round of applause too. Well, this could turn into a contest with you ladies. I've got to watch out. You're a cheeky bunch. I guess my question is, are you focused on that which can be taken away? Is your heart drawn towards that can be taken away? Because that's a recipe for worry. You know, God has a greater plan for you to be kingdom-minded, to care about things that last way beyond your lifetime, to care about things that are of eternal significance, about generosity, about love, about kindness, you know, about the real things of life, the things of depth, the things that last for eternity, sharing Jesus with somebody. That's real treasure. Showing the power of eternity to someone, that's real treasure.
Amen. Amen.
The stuff we get fixated on, it's so temporary. The things you're worried about, I bet you they're of a temporary nature because they're the only things that can grip our heart. Temporary things cause us worry. Eternal things cause us peace, cause us love, cause us to follow God. I guess at the end of the day, all that matters is the gospel of Jesus Christ, isn't it?
Amen.
You have a God in heaven who loves you. Not tolerates you, not just, thinks you're an okay person. He loves you and wants to provide for you and wants to demonstrate his care for you. Like he deeply cares for you. He really, really loves you. And he demonstrated that on the cross. One of the cruxes, well, not one of the cruxes, the crux of the Christian message is that Jesus actually allowed himself to be sacrificed so you didn't have to pay a sacrifice. Now, I'll elaborate on what that means. In life, we accumulate a debt called sin. Sin's not a very common word these days, but man, we accumulate this debt called sin where we mess up. We make mistakes, we make selfish decisions. We do things that separate us from God. But what Jesus did, instead of allowing us to be separated from God, he came and he died in our place so that separation could be broken. Repaired is a better way to say it. That any barrier between you and God has been torn down. God very much cares for you. So much so that he allowed that sacrifice to happen in order to repair the broken relationship. And so we're going to celebrate that with communion in a moment. For some people in this room, you might never have had communion. For some people in this room, this might be your 67th year of marriage and you've had communion 350 times or probably more, I don't know. Right? But what we do when we take communion is we grab a piece of bread, which Ezzy broke up for us this morning. Where are you, Ezzy? Oh, she's over in kids' church. So the bread pieces are all random sizes. There's big pieces if you're hungry and tiny pieces if you're not. What the bread represents is the broken body of Jesus broken for you. The sacrifice of Jesus for you to bring reconciliation between you and God. And when we eat that, we just remember, okay, wait a second, Jesus actually loves me. Jesus died for me. Jesus did that to repair the relationship. It's a massive, massive revelation. So we eat the bread, and then we take a little cup of juice, which represents the blood of Christ that is poured out for us, bringing reconciliation. This blood that was poured out to actually satisfy any barrier between us and God. The blood of the covenant. Up until Jesus, they used to go through all these rituals and sacrifices in order to be right with God. And what Jesus wanted to do was make it permanent. That his relationship with you is something that can be accessed at any time. And that's what we celebrate with the Lord's Supper. Isn't that such a blessing? That's got to be an antidote to our worry, knowing that we have reconciliation with God, that we are able to know him and he's able to know us, and that he cares about us on a personal level. So I want to invite you in a moment to come up. We'll just sort of form two lines. There's bread and the juice up here. Grab one bread, grab one juice, go sit at your chair and take communion at your pace. Take communion, have a pray if you're a prayer. You can have communion with the people next to you if you want to, and then I'll come back up and pray. So let's do that together.